Hey guys, Lemon02. I wanted to share actually a very cool game of Highlander. It's actually a challenging match for the deck we're playing, which is Oath, Bug Oath. I guess you could say it splashes red because it has some rainbow lands, but and it has one red card, which is Dragon's Breath, which is not really intended to be a red card in the deck. It's just a combo piece. But we're playing against Red Deck Wins, which I don't know going in. Playing against Bremp 555. So on the draw. I threw that first hand back. The first hand only had one mana source, and in the dark, I don't think it was a great hand. This hand is okay, and the reason it is so is because we have a Brainstorm plus a fetch land to kind of get rid of some of the overage on lands we have. Additionally, going down a card and having Toxic Deluge, if we're against a creature-based deck, is not going to be horrible, so I think this is a good 6, just looking at it. Unfortunately, we're against Red Deck Wins, which this hand is not as good against Red Deck Wins. A lot of folks think Toxic Deluge should be a great card against them. I actually think T-Del is pretty bad against Red Deck Wins. I think you want to point remove their creatures, not try to mass remove them, because the game tends to be less about card advantage and more about just tempo. I draw very poorly off the Brainstorm there. I get rid of the 2 tapped lands, and I go ahead and fetch away on their turn, I want to say. Or on my turn, I just do it right here. I believe I just find a basic forest, because I want to play around Price of Progress here. Incinerate. So we're just getting beat down by this Monastery Swiftspear. And we draw into an Expedition map, which really doesn't do a whole lot for us. We blow this up. The one thing the Expedition map does do is gets Glacial Chasm, which allows us to basically draw the game out by an additional turn. But that's probably not going to be good enough. Draw to Mystic Confluence, not going to save us here. Go get the Glacial Chasm just to see what we possibly could draw. Goes to our opponent's turn. Our opponent, unfortunately, has Skullcrack, which does kill us because it stops damage prevention. Can't be gained or prevented. Prevented being the key clause, and Glacial Chasm does just that. It prevents all damage to us. So, we die on this turn in an unboarded game of 100-card Singleton against Red Deck Wins, which, as I said, I think is a very tough matchup. We mulled the 6, got fairly unfortunate on Brainstorm and follow-on draws. So, you know, that's the break. Sometimes you just lose to aggro when you're playing an exceedingly controlling deck with only 2 creatures in it. So, next game, we've boarded in, I want to say, 4 cards. Chill, Flash Freeze, Blue Elemental Blast, and Hydroblast. So those are our 4 cards we brought in. Collective Brutality is main. This hand is on the verge. I'm on the play here, so I really don't want to go down to 6. It does need black mana very bad. It needs black mana to basically cast anything in the hand to enact Treasure Cruise. But I keep, just based upon the raw land count of the deck and the high number of black mana sources, I feel like it's worse to go to 6 here. I draw into Mystical Tutor, which I have a very clear plan for. My plan with it is to go get Brainstorm and use Brainstorm to find a black mana source. Ankh of Mishra is not good news because this is a landed deck. It's a loam deck, so it wants to make its land drops. And Ankh of Mishra is going to be pretty savage against our fetch lands in particular. So Ankh of Mishra hits the board. We go ahead in response because my opponent's not going to counter this unless they have Mental Misstep in their deck. Which they can do at end step anyways. Go ahead and Mental Misstep for the Brainstorm. Find Island, Personal Tutor, and Fetch Land. Have to use the Fetch Land here because I direly need the black mana. I take 4 off of this, but my intent is to escalate 3 times the Collective Brutality. I get rid of a Cordling Outburst, see that he has a Shock in his hand, as well as 2 more lands, and an Abbot of Carol Keep. Abbot comes down, but my plan is here, I'm just going to Abrupt Decay the Abbot, and then Treasure Cruise. You may think that it may make more sense to Abrupt Decay the Ankh of Mishra, but I think Ankh of Mishra I can play around more so than I can something that attacks me. I do have to play a land here to take 2 off of it, but I think over time, the Ankh is going to do less damage than the Abbot would over time as well, especially with Prowess. So we go ahead and Personal Tutor here for a Demonic Tutor, ponder into Demonic Tutor plus Forest plus Blue Elemental Blast, decide to actually keep the Blue Elemental Blast and leave the Demonic Tutor in the deck, play out the Expedition map, leave up the Blue Elemental Blast. So my plan is here, I'm going to go ahead and cast Demonic Tutor next turn and resolve an Oath of Druids, and then on the following turn have Expedition map available to me if he does not play any creatures to get Forbidden Orchard, which will account for 2 more damage. So at this point, I am at 8 count damage off of Ankh of Mishra. Go ahead and find the Forbidden Orchard, 10 count damage at this point, and that's the last of the damage I'll take off Ankh. It is actually accountable for almost all of the damage I've been done this game. Drawn to 2 lands off of my Latinum's Legacy, but Latinum's Legacy was still a great effect there because I do not want to ever have Dragon's Breath in my hand. And that's one of the reasons the card is in the deck, is just to filter my draws out, because it's a combo control deck and it has a lot of extremely dead cards, even though it is powerful. So I go ahead and look at my graveyard and debate if I want a Life from the Loam, because if I have Glacial Chasm in there, I'll probably want to pick it back up. It's not in there, so what I have to do is leave up Scroll Rack. I think I make a player here, so I take 1 off this thing. I think when I go at end step to Scroll Rack this, I probably should have just not done that, just in case like he has an in response like Lightning Bolt or something like that, or Lightning Bolt plus like Fire Blast would do it there. So I think I should have waited to do that because we would have hit into Mental Misstep, which possibly could have countered his spell. We do hit Runescar Demon plus the Dragon's Breath that we put back in, and this is more than enough to generate lethal damage and kill our opponent. But the game was extremely close, I think. I think this is a closer game than it may appear. This deck wins spectacularly, but this is actually a very difficult matchup for it, I tend to think. We had some key turns where we got pretty lucky. And managed to get there, managed to kind of finagle our win in this game too. Now, Game 3 is actually probably the most interesting game from a play decision standpoint. Like I said, I think we made one mistake in that last game, and I think that was the use of Scroll Rack as opposed to just leaving it up in response to whatever he may cast. Opponent plays a turn 1 non-basic, but no other play. Gitaxian Probe's doing its best to look like Mental Misstep in my hand. I really don't want that card, and it's possible I want to take it out. I am going to leave up the Spell Pierce here. It does not do me any favors here. I go ahead and fetch for an Underground Sea, or Watery Grave, rather. Go ahead and play out the Windswept Heath next with intentions to find a tropical island to mana drain whatever his next play is, and then utilize Demonic Tutor on the following turn with the mana drain mana to find Oath of Druids to set myself up to win on the following turn, ideally. So we get the mana drain mana here. I go ahead and tutor for the Oath. I actually take the damage here because I think Spell Pierce is worth more to me than 2 damage. I think it can stop more than 2 damage. Now, I'm upset to see Blistering Firecat on this turn, because this is 9 total damage, putting me to 3. And it means that my taking of 2 damage was possibly irrelevant, but I am vindicated here because my opponent cast Fire Blast, and I'm able to pay a card and 1 mana to stop 4 damage, which is certainly worth it. We go ahead and get Oath of Druids online here. Go ahead and grab back Life from the Loam. At this point in time, Glacial Chasm is in the graveyard. I go ahead and look at my opponent's hand. So this is actual the most interesting part of the play. Won that play involving Spell Pierce. I think was the right play. It almost felt like it may not have been, given the actual what he possessed. But I think, given most hidden information about red deck wins, the chances of him playing a Fiery Confluence or a Chandra or 2 burn spells, I think is actually higher than playing a 4-drop creature. It's not a non-zero amount of times he'll cast a 4-drop creature like Hazoret or Hellrider, or in this case Blistering Firecat. But actually, that being the case, any of those other cards I would have been happier with than Blistering Firecat, just because of the raw amount of damage it does. So we have that occur, and then we go into our upkeep, the turn that basically just passed, and we note that we have Life from the Loam plus Glacial Chasm, which means that we don't have to utilize the Expedition map to find the Glacial Chasm, which is what I intended on doing anyways. So I end up loaming that back to get it. Now, I do utilize the Gitaxian Probe here. One consideration that I could have made is I could have Personal Tutor, then taken 2 to find something with Gitaxian Probe, put it in my hand. But unfortunately, because of how low my life total is, Force of Will is not a viable find at this point in time. And I don't run Daze in this deck. So I pretty much have to concede that if my opponent has something along the lines of Skullcrack, I'm just going to lose. I get to look at their hand, and I know at this point in time that they have 1/2/1 Piker creature, and they also have Searing Blaze. Neither of which is going to be able to kill me through the Glacial Chasm, which my intent is to sacrifice it on my upkeep, not pay the upkeep cost for it. and then remand. Another option that we possibly have in front of us is that we just take the damage and leave it in play and then wasteland it, but that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me because that makes me dead to a lot more spells at that point in time. But I know for the most part I pretty much have this locked up. As we go into my next turn, I'm going to be able to get the demon, find whatever remains inside my deck, and ideally have it equipped up with the Dragon's Breath. So 2 very tight games. This game right here exceedingly tight, and I think there were a couple play decisions that were very crucial in it. I do think that going for the untapped Overgrown Tomb was the right call, and I don't know if everyone would have made that, but I do think that in that situation with that much mana, I do think Pierce is actually more relevant than the 2 damage I take, so I think it can stop more damage. And in this case, we were fairly vindicated on it and able to get there with our Oath of Druids plan. So very cool game. Actually, a very bad matchup, I think, for Oath of Druids. I think it's a harder one to win. Some of our sideboard goods were able to kind of get in there. We did see 1 blue Elemental Blast, but very cool game against Bremp, and I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this short series on this what I consider a problem matchup for Oath. But some of how you can beat it and some of the tech that I put inside this Oath deck to beat it. So I hope you guys enjoyed, and take care now.